I was standing in the vast, empty lobby of the auditorium, phone pressed to my ear. My mother, Carol, was explaining why she wouldn't be at my doctoral graduation ceremony. Around me, the marble floors echoed with the excited chatter of other families passing by, filling the space where my own should have been. "Honey, you have to understand," Carol said, her voice dripping with that practiced sweetness she reserved for delivering bad news. "Your brother, Mark, is hosting his first barbecue at his new house in Annapolis, Maryland. He's put so much work into that backyard, and he specifically picked this weekend because the weather is supposed to be perfect." My hand tightened on the phone. 8 years of graduate school, countless sleepless nights, a dissertation that took 3 years to write. It all led to this one ceremony. And she was talking about a barbecue. "Mom, I sent you the date 6 months ago," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt a knot forming behind my eyes. "I confirmed it 3 times. This is my doctorate. Do you understand what that means?" "Of course I do, sweetie. We're very proud of you." I heard dishes clanking in the background. She was cooking dinner while having this conversation. "But you have to see it from our perspective. Your brother, Mark, finally bought a house. This is a huge milestone for him. Your father, George, and I already told everyone we'd be there." A professor I knew walked past, offering a congratulatory smile. I managed a weak smile back before turning to face the wall. "So did I murmured. "I told my entire department my family would be here." "Well, you can still walk across that stage," Carol chirped, her voice artificially bright. "We'll celebrate with you another time. Why don't you just come to the barbecue after your ceremony? It'll probably still be going on." The 3-hour drive from the University of Pennsylvania to Annapolis, Maryland, flashed through my mind. She knew the distance. We'd discussed it when Mark bought the place 2 months prior. "The ceremony starts at 2, I said. "With traffic, I couldn't possibly make it before 8 or 9. "Then come tomorrow. Mark would love to show you the house. He's put in a fire pit and everything." I heard George's rumbling voice in the background, muffled. Carol covered the phone, but her hushed, "I'm handling it, George," still reached me. "Is Dad there?" I asked. "Can I talk to him?" A pause. Then George's gruff voice came on the line. "What's going on?" "Dad, please. I need you both at my graduation. I've worked 8 years for this." He sighed, a sound heavy with impatience. "Your mother explained the situation. Mark needs us there. This is important to him. And this isn't important to me?" My voice broke despite my efforts. "Don't be dramatic," George said sharply. "You're getting a piece of paper. You'll get it whether we're sitting in those seats or not. Your brother is trying to build a life, start a family. He needs our support right now." His words hit me with a jolt. A piece of paper. That's what he called the highest academic achievement I could earn. "Mark invited the whole family," George went on. "Aunts, Uncle Richard, cousins, everyone's coming to celebrate with him. You want us to bail on all those people because you want us to watch you walk across a stage for 30 seconds? I closed my eyes. Images flashed, myself at 10, winning the school science fair, my parents absent because Mark had a baseball game. At 16, making the honor roll every semester while they cheered at every one of his football practices. At 22, graduating summa cum laude from my undergraduate program in Austin, Texas, while they celebrated Mark getting a job at their friend's company. "Forget it," I said. "That's my girl. I knew you'd understand." George's voice warmed slightly. "Come by tomorrow. Mark got one of those fancy grills. You'll love it." "Sure," I lied. "I'll try to make it." I ended the call, staring at my reflection in the dark window. The crimson doctoral robe felt alien on my body, like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. All around me, families posed for pictures, parents beaming with pride next to their graduating children. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Mom said you're cool with missing the barbecue for your thing. Thanks for being flexible. Can't wait to show you the house sometime. My thing. My doctoral graduation was just my thing. I typed out 3 different replies, then deleted them all. What could I possibly say that would make him understand? He had always been the golden child, the one whose accomplishments truly mattered, whose events took priority. Asking him to see my perspective now felt impossible. The ceremony itself was beautiful. My advisor, Dr. Evelyn Reed, presented my degree with genuine warmth in her eyes. She had been more of a parent to me these past years than Carol and George, guiding me through research setbacks and celebrating every small victory. When she shook my hand, she leaned in and whispered, "Your family is missing something extraordinary. That's their loss." I just nodded, my voice gone. Afterward, my best friend from the program, Brittany, wrapped an arm around me. Her parents had flown in from Arizona, and they insisted on taking me to dinner with their family. Sitting in that restaurant, watching Brittany's mother tear up as she spoke about how proud she was, something shifted inside me. Her parents barely understood Brittany's research, yet they had crossed the country to be there. My parents couldn't even drive 3 hours. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out my laptop. The decision had likely been building for years, but this was the moment it crystallized into action. I started researching the legal name change process. The website outlined the steps: file a petition, publish a notice, attend a hearing. Simple bureaucracy to shed an identity that had never quite fit. My phone rang, Carol's face lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, she called again. This time, I answered. "Oh, good. You're home safe," she chirped. "How was the ceremony?" "Fine." "That's wonderful. Listen, the barbecue is still going strong. Mark's neighbors came over, and everyone's having such a nice time. You should see the spread he put out. Those cooking classes really paid off." I said nothing. Anyway, George and I were thinking, why don't we all do brunch next month? We can celebrate your graduation then. Doesn't that sound nice? Next month? I repeated, flatly. Well, you know how busy things get. Mark and Chloe are talking about trying for a baby soon, so we want to spend time with him before his life gets really hectic. But we'll definitely make time for you, too. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it, half expecting to see a stranger's number instead of Carol's. How could she not hear herself? How could she say these things and not recognize what they revealed? "I have to go," I said. "All right, honey. We'll talk soon. Congratulations again." The call ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment, my doctoral degree leaning against the wall where I'd propped it. 8 years of my life reduced to something they'd celebrate next month over brunch. The next morning, I filed the paperwork to change my name. My birth name, Sarah Miller, carried too much history, too many memories of always coming in second. I chose something completely different, Adrienne Sinclair. The name felt clean, unburdened by expectations I could never meet. As the legal process moved forward, I made other changes. I'd been offered a position at a research institute in San Diego, California, across the country. Initially, I was hesitant, knowing it meant moving far from family. That hesitation evaporated. I accepted the position immediately. Carol still called twice a week. I kept the conversations brief, non-committal. She'd chat about Mark's house renovations, his plans to expand the deck, Chloe's new promotion. I'd offer appropriate sounds at appropriate moments, saying as little as possible about my own life. 3 weeks after graduation, the court approved my name change. Adrienne Sinclair became my legal identity. I updated everything: my driver's license, social security card, bank accounts, credit cards. Every document that had once borne Sarah Miller was replaced. The Research Institute processed my employment paperwork under my new name. My apartment lease in San Diego bore my new identity. I transferred utilities, updated insurance, changed my email address. Piece by piece, I constructed a life that had no visible connection to the family who'd chosen a barbecue over my doctorate. I didn't tell them about the move until 2 days before I left. Carol called that Tuesday evening, and I finally shared the news. "You're moving where?" Her voice rose an octave. "Why didn't you tell us you were even looking?" "It happened quickly," I said, which was true. The job offer, acceptance, and relocation had taken less than a month. "But that's so far away. When will we see you?" The question almost made me laugh. "I'm sure we'll figure something out." "Does Mark know?" "He's going to be devastated. He was hoping you'd babysit once they have kids." Of course. The real concern wasn't my absence from their lives, but my unavailability for future childcare duties. "He'll manage," I said. George then got on the phone. "This seems pretty sudden. What's really going on?" "I got a great job offer. I'm taking it." "What about your family?" "We're here." "Your whole life is here." I looked around my half-packed apartment. Boxes everywhere, my possessions sorted into keep, donate, and trash. Most of what I owned was coming with me or getting left behind. There wasn't much that truly tied me to this place anymore. "My whole life is actually moving with me," I said. "I'll send you my new address once I'm settled." The silence stretched, long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. "If this is about graduation," George finally said, his tone hard, "you need to get over it. We're family. Family means understanding when things don't go your way." "You're right," I said. "Family should understand." "That's exactly right." I moved across the country on a Saturday. Brittany helped me load the moving truck, and her parents provided sandwiches and drinks for the road. Dr. Evelyn Reed stopped by with a care package of snacks and a coffee maker for my new place. These people, who had no obligation to care about me, showed up when it mattered. My family? They sent a group text, "Good luck with the move." My new city, San Diego, embraced me. The Research Institute was everything I'd hoped for, filled with brilliant colleagues who valued the work I'd spent years developing. I made friends quickly, drawn to people who celebrated achievements rather than diminishing them. My apartment was small, but it was mine, decorated exactly how I wanted, without anyone's input or criticism. I'd told my family I'd send my new address. I didn't. The omission was intentional. When Carol called asking for it, I deflected. "Things are so chaotic right now. Still getting settled. I'll send it soon." Weeks turned into months. I stopped answering most of their calls, responding instead with brief texts, "Busy with work." "In a meeting." "Can't talk now." The distance wasn't just geographical anymore. Mark's wife, Chloe, got pregnant. Carol called with the news, her voice bubbling with excitement. "You're going to be an aunt. Isn't that wonderful?" "Congratulations to them," I said. "We're throwing them a shower in 3 months. You'll come home for it, right?" Home. The word felt foreign. "I'll have to check my schedule." "Oh, you have to be there. Family is so important for these moments." I almost spoke then. Almost asked her where that conviction had been when my moment had mattered. But what would be the point? She would never understand. The mental gymnastics required to see her own hypocrisy were beyond her capacity. "I'll let you know," I said instead. I didn't go to the shower. I sent a gift, something expensive and impersonal from their registry. Carol called afterward, her disappointment thinly veiled. "Everyone asked about you." It would have been nice if you'd made the effort. The effort? As if I hadn't spent 8 years making an effort that went completely unacknowledged. I had work commitments, I said. You always have work commitments lately. Your family misses you. They missed having me available for their convenience. There was a difference. A year passed, then 2. I built a life that, for the first time, felt authentically mine. I published research papers, presented at conferences, made genuine connections with people who saw me for who I was, not as the disappointing shadow of my brother. I dated, traveled, adopted a cat named Professor Whiskers, who greeted me at the door every evening. My phone still rang with calls from Carol and George, though less frequently now. The conversations grew shorter, more strained. They didn't know about my publications, my presentations, my promotion to senior researcher. I'd stopped sharing those details. What was the point of offering up accomplishments to people who had never truly celebrated them? Mark and Chloe's baby was born, a girl they named Lily. Carol sent pictures. I looked at them politely, made appropriate comments, and forgot about them as soon as the call ended. Uncle Richard, whom I barely remembered, passed away. Carol expected me to come back for the funeral. I sent flowers instead. You're becoming a stranger to this family, George said during one increasingly rare phone call. Am I? I asked. Or am I just finally matching the level of effort to the level of interest? What's that supposed to mean? I could have explained. I could have laid out every missed event, every dismissed achievement, every time Mark's ordinary life milestones had taken precedence over my extraordinary ones. But he wouldn't hear it. He would just tell me I was being dramatic, just like he had about graduation. Nothing, I said. It doesn't mean anything. 3 years after my graduation, Mark got divorced. Carol called, distraught, begging me to come home and support the family through this difficult time. I have a major presentation, I said. Can't you reschedule? Your brother needs you. When had he ever needed me before? When I was struggling through my dissertation, working 70-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and determination, had he called to check on me? Had he offered support? I really can't, I said. She called back an hour later. George and I have been talking. We think you need therapy. This distance you've created isn't healthy. We're worried about you. The irony was stunning. They created this distance by their choices, their priorities, their consistent message that I mattered less. Now they were concerned because I'd finally accepted what they'd been telling me all along. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I'm fine. You're clearly not fine. You've cut yourself off from your family. That's not normal behavior. Normal. What even was normal in our family? Was it normal for parents to skip their daughter's doctoral graduation for a barbecue? Was it normal to consistently prioritize one child over another for decades? I should go, I said. We miss you, Carol's voice cracked. Please come home. Whatever we did to upset you, we can talk about it. Whatever they did. As if she didn't know. As if there was some mystery to my absence that required solving. I have that presentation, I repeated. I'll call you later. I didn't call later. Days turned into weeks. Mark reached out directly for the first time in years, a long text message about how family should stick together during hard times, how he'd always been there for me and expected the same in return. I read it 3 times, searching for any moment he'd actually been there for me. I came up empty. The Research Institute promoted me to director of my department. At 34, I became one of the youngest people to hold that position in the Institute's history. The announcement made trade publications. My face appeared in industry magazines. Colleagues from around the world sent congratulations. My family never knew. I'd stopped updating them about my career years ago. They still thought I was just a researcher doing whatever it was I did that they'd never bothered to understand. Brittany called the day my promotion was announced. "Have you told them?" she asked. "No, are you going to?" I thought about it. Imagine calling Carol, telling her about the promotion, waiting for her response. Would she be excited, proud? Or would she mention Mark in the same breath, equalizing our achievements, even though his divorce and my directorship had nothing to do with each other? "I don't think so," I said. "They're going to find out eventually," Brittany pressed. "Your name is all over those publications." "Maybe," I acknowledged. "But they won't be looking. They never have been." For years after graduation, Carol and George's 40th wedding anniversary arrived. Carol called with details about the party Mark was planning. "You absolutely must be there," she insisted. 40 years is a major milestone. The whole family will be there. I held the phone, considering. Part of me wanted to go, to see if anything had changed. Maybe time had given them perspective. Maybe they'd finally see what their choices had cost. But I knew better. Going back would mean opening myself up to the same dynamics, the same patterns, the same hierarchy where Mark's needs trumped mine. I'd spent 4 years building a life free from that weight. Why would I willingly step back into it? "I can't make it," I said. "I have a conference that weekend." "Reschedule it. This is your parents' 40th anniversary." "I'm the keynote speaker," I said, which was true. "I can't cancel." The silence on the other end told me everything. She wanted to argue but couldn't quite figure out how to diminish a keynote speech the way she'd dismissed so many of my other achievements. "Your father will be very hurt," she finally said. Would he, though? Would he really notice my absence among all the other family members? Or would he be too busy celebrating with Mark, the son who'd stayed close, who'd given him a grandchild who fit the mold they'd always wanted? "I'll send a gift," I said. The gift was generous, expensive. They sent a thank you card with a generic message. No phone call, no real acknowledgement, just a card that could have been sent to any distant relative. I framed my doctorate and hung it in my office at the institute. Visitors often commented on it, impressed by the university's name and the field of study. I'd tell them about my research, my dissertation, the 8 years of work it represented. They'd respond with genuine interest, asking questions, engaging with the subject matter. My family had never asked about any of it. Not once. 5 years after graduation, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Dr. Adrienne Sinclair?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is Rebecca Norton from the National Science Foundation. I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected as a recipient of this year's Outstanding Research Award." The room tilted. The National Science Foundation, NSF, award was one of the highest honors in my field. I'd seen the list of past recipients, scientists whose work had shaped entire disciplines. "I'm sorry," I managed. "Could you repeat that?" She did, then continued with details about the ceremony, the monetary prize, the publicity that would accompany the announcement. I took notes mechanically, my hand shaking slightly. After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. Then I called Brittany. "I won," I said when she answered. "Won what?" "The NSF award." "I won the NSF award." Her scream of excitement nearly burst my eardrum. Within an hour, she'd organized an impromptu celebration. Colleagues from the institute crowded into my office, champagne appearing from somewhere. Everyone talked excitedly about what this meant for my career, for the institute, for the field. Dr. Evelyn Reed hugged me tightly. "Your family must be so incredibly proud," she said. I smiled and said nothing. The award ceremony happened 2 months later in Washington, D.C. The ballroom glittered with the top minds in science, everyone in formal attire, the atmosphere electric with celebration and recognition. When they called my name, I walked to the stage on legs that barely felt solid. The award was heavy in my hands, the crystal catching the light as I held it up for the cameras. In my acceptance speech, I thanked Dr. Reed, my colleagues, the Institute for their support. I talked about the importance of persistence, of believing in your work even when others don't see its value. The audience applauded warmly. I didn't mention my family. They didn't cross my mind until hours later at the reception when someone asked if my parents had been able to attend. They couldn't make it, I said simply, because I hadn't told them. The award, the ceremony, the biggest professional achievement of my life, happened without their knowledge. Just like my graduation had happened without their presence. The difference was, this time, the absence was my choice. News of the award spread. Articles appeared in science publications, interviews were requested. My work was suddenly thrust into a spotlight I'd never expected. The Institute's communications department handled most of it, but I did a few interviews, talking about my research and what the recognition meant for the field. My name was everywhere in my professional circles: Dr. Adrian Sinclair, NSF Award recipient, Director of Research, published author, keynote speaker, expert in my field. My family still had no idea. 6 months after the award ceremony, Carol called. I ran into Mrs. Jenkins at the grocery store today, she said. She asked about you. I realized I didn't know what to tell her. What have you been up to? The question was so absurd, I almost laughed. What had I been up to? Just winning one of the most prestigious awards in my field, leading a research department, building a career people were writing about in industry publications. The usual, I said. Work, mostly. You work too much. You should come visit. Take a break. Mark would love to see you. Lily's getting so big. Lily, my niece, 5 years old now, and I'd never met her in person. Just seen pictures texted periodically. A child who existed to me only as images on a screen. Maybe sometime, I said, the same non-answer I'd given for years. You always say that, Carol said, frustration creeping into her voice. But you never actually come. Do you even consider us family anymore? The question hung in the air. Did I? What made someone family beyond shared DNA? Was it the people who showed up when it mattered? The ones who celebrated your victories and mourned your losses? The ones who truly saw you and loved what they found? By that definition, my family was Brittany, Dr. Evelyn Reed, and my colleagues at the Institute. They were the ones who'd been present for the moments that mattered, who knew who I really was. Of course you're my family, I said, because it was easier than the truth. Then act like it. Carol said sharply. We've given you space. We've tried to understand whatever phase you're going through, but it's been 5 years. This needs to stop. Phase. She thought this was a phase. 5 years of building a separate life, and she characterized it as a temporary rebellion that needed to end. I'm not going through a phase, I said quietly. This is just my life now. Well, your life shouldn't exclude your family. That's not how this works, is it? The words came out before I could stop them. You excluded me first. You just don't like that I finally accepted it. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? She genuinely didn't know. Or maybe she did, but had rewritten history in her mind until their choices seemed reasonable and my response seemed irrational. Nothing, I said. I have to go. I ended the call before she could respond. That night, I looked myself up online, curious what someone would find if they searched my name. Pages of results appeared, articles about my research, the NSF award announcement, conference presentations, professional profiles, my face smiling in photographs from various events. Always professional, always poised. Then I searched my birth name, Sarah Miller, the one I'd left behind. Almost nothing recent appeared. Some old college records. A few mentions in family friends' social media posts from years ago. That person barely existed online anymore, and she certainly didn't exist in my daily reality. I'd effectively become someone else. Dr. Adrian Sinclair had accomplishments, respect, recognition. The person I'd been before had none of those things, at least not in the eyes of the people who should have mattered most. 7 years after my graduation, George had a health scare. Carol called, panicked, demanding I come home immediately. "Heart attack," she said. "He's in the hospital. You need to be there." I booked a flight. Old instincts kicked in before rational thought could intervene. Family emergency meant you went. That was the rule, even for a family that had never quite followed the rules when it came to me. The hospital was exactly as I remembered hospitals being: sterile, fluorescent, filled with worry and waiting. I found Carol in a waiting room, her face pale and drawn. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, seemed confused. "Do I know you?" she asked. Then recognition dawned. "Oh my God, I almost didn't recognize you. You look so different." I did look different. Professional success had changed me. Better clothes, a better haircut, the kind of polish that came from being photographed for publications and speaking at conferences. I looked like the person I'd become, not the person she remembered. "How is he?" I asked. She updated me on George's condition. "Stable now." The doctors were optimistic. They'd keep him for observation, but he'd probably be fine. Relief washed through me, despite everything. Whatever complicated feelings I had about my father, I didn't want him dead. Mark arrived an hour later. He did a double take when he saw me, similar to Carol's reaction. "Wow," he said. "You clean up nice." The comment irritated me, the implication that I'd somehow been deficient before, but I let it go. This wasn't the time. We sat together in that waiting room, the three of us. The silence was oppressive. So many years had passed. So much had changed. None of us knew how to bridge the gap that had grown in the space between visits and phone calls. "You should come around more," Mark finally said. "Lily asks about you sometimes. She's seen pictures." Pictures. My niece knew me from pictures. A stranger aunt who sent birthday gifts but never appeared in person. "My work keeps me pretty busy," I said. "Everyone's busy," he countered. "You make time for what matters." The irony wasn't lost on me. This, from the man whose barbecue had mattered more than my doctorate. "You're right," I said. "You do make time for what matters." He didn't catch the edge in my voice, or if he did, he chose to ignore it. George was released 2 days later, with instructions to reduce stress, improve his diet, and exercise more. I stayed for 3 days total, spending time at the hospital and at Carol and George's house, sleeping in my old bedroom, which had been converted into a home office. The bed was now a pull-out couch. My childhood had been erased, replaced with filing cabinets and a desk. On the last evening, Carol made dinner. The four of us sat around the kitchen table, eating pot roast like we had countless times when I was growing up. Except everything was different now. We were playing at being a family, going through the motions, but the substance was gone. "So, tell us about your work," George said, making an effort. "Carol says you don't talk about it much." Where would I even start? How could I compress 7 years of achievement into a dinner conversation with people who'd never shown interest before? "I do research," I said simply. "It's pretty technical." "Try us," Mark said. "We're not complete idiots." So, I tried. I gave them the simplified version of my work, the public-facing explanation I'd perfected for non-specialist audiences. They nodded along, made sounds of understanding, but their eyes glazed over within minutes. This was too complicated. Too far outside their experience. I might as well have been speaking another language. That's great, honey, Carol said when I finished. It sounds very impressive. But she said it the way someone compliments a child's finger painting, patronizing, performative. She had no real understanding of what I'd just described, no framework for appreciating its significance. Do you make good money doing that? George asked. I do fine, I said. Because your brother just got promoted at his company. He's making 6 figures now. Really turned his life around after the divorce. There it was. Less than 2 minutes after asking about my work, we were back to Mark's achievements. Some patterns never changed. That's great, I said neutrally. I left the next morning, hugged them all goodbye, and promised to visit again soon, knowing, even as I said it, that I probably wouldn't. This visit had confirmed what I already knew. Too much distance had grown between us, and I had no desire to close it. On the flight home, I pulled up my phone and looked at pictures from the National Science Foundation ceremony. Me in an evening gown, holding that crystal award, surrounded by brilliant minds who understood and valued what I'd accomplished. That was my real life. That was where I belonged. 3 more years passed. My career continued its upward trajectory. More awards, more recognition, more opportunities. I traveled internationally for conferences, collaborated with researchers across the globe, and saw my work cited in papers I'd never imagined would reference it. My family and I spoke less and less. Occasional texts on holidays, brief calls every few months. We became distant relatives to each other, connected by blood, but not by substance. I didn't hide my success, exactly, but I didn't advertise it either. My professional life existed in parallel to my family relationships. The two never intersected. They didn't know about the awards because I didn't tell them. They didn't know about the promotions because I saw no point in sharing. What would happen if I told them? Would they suddenly care? Would they recognize what they'd missed? Or would they find some way to minimize it, to redirect the conversation back to Mark's life, to maintain the hierarchy where his ordinary milestones mattered more than my extraordinary ones? I'd stopped needing their approval years ago. That was the real change. When I won the National Science Foundation Award, I didn't think, I wish my parents could see this. I thought, I'm glad Brittany's here. The family you choose ends up mattering more than the family you're born into. I'd chosen differently than they probably expected, but I'd chosen well. 10 years after my graduation, I received an email from a university offering me an endowed chair position. It was the kind of offer that came once in a career, solidifying your place among the top minds in your field. I accepted without hesitation. The press release went out 2 weeks later. Dr. Adrian Sinclair, distinguished researcher, National Science Foundation Award recipient, appointed to the Harrison Chair of Advanced Sciences. My picture appeared in the university's announcement, a professional headshot, my credentials listed impressively beneath my name. That's when my family found out. Carol's call came 3 days after the announcement. I saw her name on my screen and almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, no preamble, her voice tight. Tell us about any of it. The awards, the promotions, this new position. I had to find out from Susan Peterson, whose daughter saw an article about you. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Having to admit to her that I had no idea my own daughter had won some major award. I sat down slowly. How did you out? Susan sent me the article. I've spent the past hours searching your name online. There are dozens of articles, pictures of you at ceremonies, interviews. You're apparently some kind of important scientist, and you never said a word. The accusation in her voice was rich, as if I owed her updates on my life, as if she'd earned the right to know. I've been busy, I said. Too busy to tell your own mother that you won a national award? Too busy to mention you're being honored by universities? Her voice cracked. What happened to you? You used to tell us everything. When? I asked quietly. When did I tell you everything, and you actually listened? Silence. Did you know I published 6 papers last year? I continued. Do you know what my research is about? Can you name a single project I've worked on in the past decade? That's not fair. You never talk about your work. I stopped talking about it because none of you ever cared. You'd nod and smile, then immediately change the subject to something about Mark. That's not true, is it? My voice remained calm, factual. Name one achievement of mine you celebrated. One accomplishment you made time for. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. We missed your graduation, she finally said, her voice small. That's what this is about. You're still angry about that. I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it. Anger had burned out years ago, replaced by acceptance. I'm just done pretending it didn't matter. It was 10 years ago. You need to let it go. I did let it go, I said. I let go of the need for your approval. I let go of waiting for you to see me. I built a life where I'm surrounded by people who value what I do. You're upset because you finally noticed I'm gone, but I've been gone for years. You just weren't paying attention. That's cruel, Carol whispered. Maybe it was, but it was also true. I have to go, I said. I have a meeting. I ended the call and sat staring at my phone. 10 years. It had taken 10 years for them to notice I'd become someone they didn't recognize, someone successful and accomplished and completely separate from their world. Part of me had always wondered if they'd ever see it. Now they had, and it felt hollow. Their recognition came too late, mattered too little. I'd already learned to live without it. Mark called next. Mom's really upset, he said. You should call her back. Should I? Look, I get that you're mad about the graduation thing, but this is kind of extreme, don't you think? Cutting us off for a decade because we missed one ceremony. One ceremony. He'd reduced 8 years of doctoral work, the pinnacle of academic achievement, to one ceremony. It wasn't about the ceremony, I said. It was about every choice before it, and every choice after it. It was about priorities. You all made yours clear. I just finally accepted them. We're a family, he said. That has to count for something. It does, I agreed. Just not as much as you think it should. He tried to argue, to convince me I was being unreasonable. I listened politely, saying nothing. Eventually, he gave up. The calls and texts continued for weeks. Carol wanted to visit, to see my new position, to reconnect. George sent gruff messages about forgiveness and family bonds. Mark tried guilt, tried logic, tried everything he could think of to get me to come around. I responded minimally, yes, I received your message. No, I'm too busy for a visit right now. Thank you for thinking of me. They didn't understand, and I'd stopped trying to explain. You couldn't make someone see what they'd never been willing to look at. Today, I'm 42 years old. I hold an endowed chair at one of the country's top universities. My research has influenced policy, changed practices, opened new avenues of understanding in my field. I've mentored dozens of graduate students who've gone on to their own successful careers. I have friends who feel like family, colleagues who challenge and inspire me, a life that feels authentic and earned. My birth family exists on the periphery of that life. We exchange holiday cards. I send gifts for birthdays and anniversaries. We maintain the appearance of connection while acknowledging, at least to ourselves, that the substance is gone. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd come to my graduation. Would that one choice have changed the trajectory? Or was it just the most obvious symbol of something that had been true all along? I'll never know. But I do know this, changing my name and walking away from people who never truly saw me was the best decision I ever made. Dr. Adrian Sinclair has a life worth living. The person I used to be, Sarah Miller, just had a life worth leaving behind. My mother, Carol, still doesn't understand. She thinks I'm punishing them, being vindictive, holding an unreasonable grudge. She can't see that I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. There's a difference between anger and boundary setting, between revenge and self-preservation. I didn't change my name to hurt them. I changed it to become someone who couldn't be hurt by them anymore. And that decision changed everything. It gave me permission to build a life on my own terms, to find family in chosen connections rather than obligatory ones, to stop waiting for approval that was never going to come. 10 years ago, I stood in an empty auditorium lobby, listening to my mother explain why a barbecue mattered more than my doctorate. Today, I stand in a university office with my name on the door, surrounded by evidence of everything I've accomplished without them. I don't need them to be proud of me anymore. I'm proud of myself. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you needed to choose yourself, even if it meant letting go of what you thought family was?